She is the advisor of Park German Climate and Energy Partnership, and she has an extensive experience as a development partner in Pakistan promoting the cause of climate with the governments and also with the private sector. So welcome to this chat session, Ms. Sobia Becker.
Thank you so much, Zainab. It's such a pleasure to join you.
So I think we are going to be very candid with you, and especially based on your expertise and experience, I'm going to ask you very direct questions. I hope that would be okay.
Ooh, okay.
So, my first question from you is regarding the public and private partnerships in Pakistan. You see, the agenda of this entire conference and expo that we are doing, it's Sustainability Investment Expo, Pioneering Solutions for Climate Action, and for the conference, it's from moving from fragility to resilience to enhance sustainable development. So we realize the fact that without taking on board private sector, academia and all stakeholders, it's impossible to handle or to manage or to combat climate change. So what do you think are some of the key challenges that Pakistan's private sector is facing when it comes to climate agenda?
Thank you, Zainab. That is a fantastic question. And I think that the theme for this year's conference is also very, very aptly titled, because we are definitely at a crossroads. When you look at the global perspective and you see that of the many tipping points, more than 9 have already been crossed, it gives you an idea, an indication of what is to come. I myself am a firm believer in co-opting the private sector as a partner in development. And in Pakistan, unfortunately, that hasn't really been the case. Excuse me. There is a growing awareness now on the part of the private sector, and you have very capable private sector partners at the expo representing the type of things that they're doing. But when you ask me about the challenge, or the challenges rather, I think that the biggest challenge that the private sector has is the private sector itself. Because certainly they have the resources, they have the ability to attract very talented people. They have mandates on environmental social governance in addition to corporate social responsibility, yet they've been slow to pick up the mantle that, that climate change, this challenge that is before them. So I think they are the biggest challenge themselves. When you look at the different climate models that we have, and German Development Cooperation is doing a lot of work in this area. So when you look at all of the models, the picture that these models are painting it's a grim picture. It's a picture which shows heightened climate vulnerability that comes from increased temperatures. It comes from variable precipitation patterns. So when you cannot predict your sun and your water and how it's going to impact your communities and the ecosystems, how can the private sector be assured of the inputs that they need for production? So this is the second very big challenge that they have. Related to that, obviously, the climate vulnerability also brings into play factors that will affect the health of the workforce. And this is, again, a threat. So there are a number of threats, and and the private sector needs to rise to the challenge and address all of these threats that they are facing. And so let me sum all of this up by saying that the first challenge is the private sector for the private sector. The second big challenge is understanding that, with their economic activity and the fact that they have a direct impact on the ecosystems, communities, and the livelihoods of the communities that they work with, they also need to understand how this local action can link up to global action. So there are 3 tiers of activity here. There's the immediate local level, then it's the national level, and then it's the global level. So this full understanding, this big picture of what I, as a private sector institution, entity, organization, call it whatever you may, what I'm doing and how that links up to the global agenda. Now, I'm just not here referring only to the transnational corporations or the multinational corporations, but I'm also here thinking of the small and medium-sized enterprises that actually are forming parts of, the supply chain that links up to the global level, and how important it is for these SMEs to also be very aware of the responsibility that they face. So this, I suppose, in my thinking, would be the third biggest challenge that we have. And I'll stop here.
Thank you, and I think you have been very open and vocal about the challenges that private sector in actual face. It's not just the surroundings or circumstances, but the private sector itself as well. So you have also mentioned a few, suggestions for how private sector can overcome those challenges. But like in 3 points, any strategic, any strategic action plans or any strategic way forward that you think could be, or the potential opportunities that private sector can take to enhance the climate action and overall agenda in the country?
The biggest opportunity lies, like I said, within the industry itself. So if I, for example, am a textile producer, then some of the lowest hanging fruits opportunities lie within the boundaries of my factory. And boundaries is a nice segue to the idea of scope 1, 2, and 3 boundaries, defining your carbon footprint. So it's very important that industries understand what their carbon footprint is and how they're going to address that. Because by establishing what their emissions are and where their emissions are, they are able to draw down on a lot of support, and they are able to also attract a lot of investment. So this would be, I think, the opportunity number one. Related to opportunity number one is the idea of sustainable finance, of patient capital, because at this moment in time, you have an incredible quantum of money, sustainable finance, patient capital, that investments or investors have locked into place, and they are looking for opportunities to invest that. But the key here is investment in climate resilient industries. So this ability to attract finance, sustainable finance, is very important. Of course, not to overlook the fact that eventually, when we have a domestic emissions trading scheme, within Pakistan, there are also international ETSs. So the ability to enter carbon markets will also be dictated by that. So this would be, well, this is part of the same opportunity. And then the third opportunity obviously is that you're putting the private sector is putting itself on a green trajectory, a trajectory that ensures that they will be around for many years to come, rather than being impacted by a rapidly changing climate, and then being forced to either discontinue or have some other sort of a breakdown of their economic activity. So that would be the third opportunity.
I think that's one of the key points you've raised here is the carbon markets opportunities, and that's an important agenda point for the upcoming COP29 as well. And the private sector throughout the world is looking for, what's going to be decided. So I think, yeah, and the sustainable finance, that's very important as well, because there are lots of opportunities, but when it comes to the actual sustainable finance and its accessibility, and then giving it back to the communities, that's where private sector comes in. So thank you for raising those important points. My next question from you is, now Pakistan and of course rest of the world too, we'll all be working around NDCs 3.0. So we are supposed to be submitting these NDCs next year. we do realize the fact that there is some contribution coming in from the private sector initiatives as well. So, but when it comes to NDCs, like last times in NDCs we did not have much of the private sector roles mentioned within the NDCs and how their solutions can be made part of it. So how do you see private sector's role in the next NDC, which is NDC 3.0, and how their contributions can be aligned with the government's NDC 3.0 agenda?
Another brilliant question, Zainab, but of course I expect only brilliant questions from you. And next year with the global stocktake, this is a very important development. So in the NDC, we have 5 sectors. Industry is one such sector. And taking the 2015 as a baseline, we also know that by 2030, Pakistan's emissions are going to grow exponentially. So we're looking at an almost 400% increase in greenhouse gas emissions just for the industrial sector. And it's high time that these national level targets are cascaded down to the different industrial sectors where the different industries, the most polluting industries, are then taking accountability and remedying their actions. So the single most important thing that can be done is to take the targets that Pakistan has declared to the FCC, and then to sectorally assign those targets to the different industrial branches. And that would make a lot of sense. Now, what's in it for the industries? And here I'm very pleased to give you a live example of good things that happen when industries commit to abating emissions. Germany has established the Nitric Acid Climate Action Group. And the idea behind that is that companies, mostly fertilizer companies that produce a very specific type of fertilizers, they emit a lot of nitrous oxide emissions. Nitrous oxide emissions are many times more potent than carbon dioxide emissions. So if you address those, you have a tremendous win for Pakistan's NDC. In all of Pakistan, there is one fertilizer company. I shall not name that company at this time, but there's one fertilizer company who has expressed their readiness to put into place every sort of measure to control or abate their nitrous oxide emissions, with the result that, and with the support of the government of Pakistan, Ministry of Climate Change, and here I think I have to really appreciate from the depth of my heart the efforts of the coordinator to the Prime Minister on climate change, Madam Romina Khurshid Alam, and Secretary Climate Change, Mrs. Aisha Humaira Moriani, on their efforts to push this through. The result has been that we've been able to unlock 7.5 million euros of unconditional climate finance that will, in the form of an in-kind commitment, go to this particular industry to give them the latest abatement technology for nitrous oxide emissions. So, this includes procurement, installation, training, monitoring. So it's the full cycle that Germany is supporting. For their part, this industry will invest 2 million euros of their own money in upgrading a second facility of theirs. And this is a classic example, and I think it also kind of segues very nicely the previous things that I've been saying. It's a classic example of the good things that happen when the private sector steps forward, it makes the commitment, takes action within their own sphere of influence, and how they can get public support for that. And we're extremely excited about it because with this initiative, Pakistan will be able to offset a very significant proportion of their emissions under NDC 3.0. So it's a very tangible contribution, and we're very excited about this.
Congratulations on such an amazing initiative, and I think it's a brilliant initiative because we are talking about carbon dioxide, we're talking about methane, and this is something that we haven't been talking about, the nitrous oxide. So that's brilliant, and I'm sure that because of support from the Ministry of Climate Change, especially Madam Ramina Khurshid, the development partners, they're actually scaling up their investment in Pakistan for strengthening climate action, and Pak-German Climate and Energy Partnership is one of those partnerships. So thank you for that. My next question is, it's again a candid question, but of course I really want your point of view because you have been working in this sector with so many partners. If you could wave a magic wand and there's one thing that you could change from Pakistan's climate
One, I think the first thing, no, not I think, I know. The first thing that I would do is to take care of the disconnect between the national and the subnational level. And this flows from the highest level of government down to the smallest unit of government, because we have to look at it not just from a mitigation point of view, as we were just talking about with the nitrous oxide emission, but are really the ones you find at your tehsil and your district level. And they're not represented. Their voice is not heard. Similarly, the national and the subnational governments need to work together in a much more cogent manner to ensure that, I spoke earlier about the NDC and the importance of goals cascading down. And these goals have to cascade down and the actions have to roll up so that we can reach the targets of the NDC 3.0. Because at the end of the day, forget about all the formalities of the international conventions and the COPs and everything. At the end of the day, what you have before you are over 240 million people at risk. You have communities at risk, you have livelihoods at risk, and you will not have the financial means to rehabilitate these communities in the aftermath of an extreme weather event. And this is the reality that we're looking at. So it's very important that we're strengthening the voice of the, let's say, of the people to the government and the government to the people, that there's a very healthy feedback loop there, and that actions are being translated and are moving beyond mere documentation, because it's the need of the hour to do that. I like to think that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So it's very important for all players, including the private sector, to claim their place at the table so that they can be a part of this affirmative action that this country so badly needs in order to move forward. Otherwise, the reality is very, very grim. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm just checking my watch, and I think we're still left with a bit of time. So I'll use that. And although this was not part of the agenda, but I'm really enjoying the conversation with you. So just very candidly, of course, how do you see, or not just see, but rather, what is one thing, what is one recommendation for the developing countries you would like to give them for the COP29? You can talk about Pakistan or you can talk about developing countries as whole. So it's your take, but we really want to have recommendations because we are all key stakeholders and COP29 is around the corner. So we would like everyone's perspective on how do they see it and what is key recommendation that they could give to not just Pakistan but entire developing world for the next COP29.
Thank you, Zainab. Zainab, I've been working in climate vulnerable countries now for almost 2 decades. In the Eastern Caribbean, where they're very affected by hydromet disasters, cyclones, hurricanes that really destroy these windward islands. And then also in Pakistan, in addition to other parts of Asia which are very climate vulnerable. And for me, what I've seen in all of these years is that evidence, the value of evidence, and then data-driven evidence is very, very important. So the case that you make at COP29 needs to be backed up by robust data, data that can be monitored, verified, and reported against. And I very often say that Pakistan's ability to draw down on international climate finance is linked very closely to its ability to develop bankable projects. And again, for bankable projects, you need data. And there are so many other avenues which you can then explore, but you need to go in with evidence base and not just arguments for why you should have money. Because just look around you. I mean, we had the terrible tragedy that was the floods of 2022. A month and a half later, you had a drought in the Horn of in East Africa. Then you had another very big catastrophe in another part of the world. So you see, this attention, it moves very much because finances have then to be diverted to cope with the next disaster. But what do countries like Pakistan need to do in order to prevent hazards becoming disasters? And this is critical. And a large part of all of that also is strengthening governance, because the ability to deal with disasters and the ability to identify where is a disaster climate induced and where is a disaster, what part of a disaster was poor governance, this is something that the models can also tell us now. So, we are moving in terms of the scientific work that we're doing, we're moving to a higher level of maturity. And developing countries will be coming up the curve. I can give you an example from the work that GIZ is doing in Pakistan. And, we have a lot of climate risk modeling. We've been working very closely with the Ministry of Climate Change, Global Change Impact Studies Center. Really sorry, I get the acronym wrong often. Strengthening their ability to monitor and report against their greenhouse gas emissions. We are working with national partners on strengthening their climate modeling capabilities. We have established a climate information portal because now under the enhanced transparency framework, it's also important to address information asymmetries in the system. So there are a number of measures that we are taking to address all of these, let's call them inequalities and information asymmetries. But then it's within the ambit of the national partners to ensure that they're also using the capabilities that we're developing. So I think I'll pause here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sobia, for a very candid yet thought-provoking discussion. And I think your points around data-driven evidence for the bankable projects, it's a very important and crucial point for not just Pakistan, but other developing countries as well, as you have mentioned, that we need data to create an evidence that we are vulnerable. And, this is something that is not in our control, and we all need to work together. And I think on this note, this is one of the key recommendations that we'll all be taking to COP29 wherever it's possible. So thank you for sharing that with us at this forum by SDPI, and we do hope that we see a positive future together with the Pak-German and Climate Energy Partnership with support from Germany, and your efforts to collaborate with government and private sector, they're commendable, and I'm really grateful to you that you have joined us here for this candid discussion over a very short notice. So thank you so much once again, and also to the viewers, our stall, of course it's our stall.
It's your stall.
It's our stall. So GIZ stall is
the Pak-German Climate Energy Partnership.
Yeah. Partnership stall is right in the main hall in the expo zone. So don't forget to visit the stall and learn about the great initiatives that they are taking through this partnership to strengthen climate action in Pakistan. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll sign out here. Thank you.